What's up, everybody? Welcome to week 96. Count it, week 96 of Shark Sports Radio. Alongside of me is Andrew George. He goes by Ticket. And it's yours truly, Mark Loisel Jr., a.k.a. Shark, right here in the Ocean State. Thank you all for taking a dive in the tank with us tonight. As always, you can tune in, use your Apple Podcast, SoundCloud, and or Spotify app. Check us out on X at SSR34 _ YouTube at the Shark Sports Radio channel and on TikTok at Shark Sports Radio. We are live here. We want to tell you and demand you to play Underdog today. Deposit offer is up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Use the promo code SharkSports and you get a free pick. And Oostover for the month of October, there will be a boost or promo every day in the month of October, so let's take advantage. Ticket, you play Underdog, right?
Absolutely. Played our picks from last week. Actually, you nailed it home.
I did.
With your picks.
I did, 4 for 4. Yep.
So listen, if you listened to Shark last week, you guys would be with that deposit bonus, depending on what you laid in there. Regardless of what you put in, you'd be ahead.
Yeah, you'd be ahead. Yeah. And Ticket, speaking of ahead, right? The Celtics and the Lakers got ahead in the NBA season last night, right? I think we can confidently say, you and I, that we are happy today with the performances from our respective teams. Obviously for me, being a Celtics guy, they raising the banners, they got the rings, they almost tied NBA record for most threes in a game, which was a climactic disaster, later on in the game.
Were you watching that?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun watching that. Brick City. But they hit shots.
Like Xavier Tillman's three-pointers there.
Yeah, it got boring after a little while, but we're going to see it all year. So that's what they're going to do, shoot 63s. But to flip to the Lakers side, they were very impressive, and that's why I want to kind of give you the floor. But first, I really liked what LeBron James, said to his son last night. And I know whether it was staged or not, it was like just a cool moment to see like a father talk to a son on the bench and say, "Are you ready for this?" And he was like, "No choice to," right? Like that. I'm paraphrasing, but that was like simply like the reaction and interaction that they had, and I thought it was a really cool moment.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, whether it was staged or not, or whatever people want to say about it.
Yeah,
I thought it was very cool. I thought it was very smart by JJ Redick also, just to kind of get it out of the way. This is going to be talked about until it happens.
Yep.
So you might as well just make it happen right away. But it wasn't also, the only smart thing I think JJ Redick did. I was high on him. I know a lot of people weren't crazy about the hire. They said, he's got the podcast with LeBron. The end of the day, I think JJ Redick is one of the smarter young basketball minds. At least, I think he was one of the better personalities on ESPN. He actually was one of the few that would like delve into a lot of like actual game talk.
Yep.
And listen, anyone who can sync up basketball IQ wise with LeBron James, that can't be a bad thing.
No.
I mean, he's one of the most brilliant players. I mean, say what you want about LeBron. You can't question his IQ. You can question some other stuff. You can't question his basketball IQ. But last night was a good start for the Lakers season. Minnesota is a team that a lot of people think are like a trendy pick to maybe be the Mavs of last year and make a run. Obviously, they had a deep run last year, knocking out the Nuggets. Rosters changed. I actually thought that this was a good spot for the Lakers to get a team where, they lost Towns. It's their first game without him. They're figuring stuff out.
Sure.
Anthony Davis was an absolute beast. If that's the Anthony Davis they're going to get, not even, I don't say night in, night out, because I know there's going to be load management with him. And there's going to be like an ankle tweak here and there. That's just who he is. But if they can get that type of production out of him, they could make a run. I mean, listen, not to run away with this one and filibuster, but like the last 2 years, they got knocked out by the Nuggets, who I think everyone would say has been one of the better teams in the league the last 2 seasons. And they gave the Nuggets I know they got swept the year before. They won one game last year. They were in every game to the last possession or so with Denver in last year's postseason.
Yeah, they were.
And if they beat Denver, maybe they beat the Timberwolves in the next round, and then they get the Mavericks. And I mean, like, who knows? But I just think they had a tough draw. Obviously, part of that is LeBron and AD take a lot of time off during the regular season, and they're not going to, be one of the top 3 or 4 seeds. It's just about being healthy.
Right.
But yeah, overall, nice night for the Lakers. Obviously, a very nice night for your Celtics.
Yeah, and just talk about JJ Redick real quick. Like when you think about him, right? He's relatable. He's a great communicator. He doesn't have any problems like getting into, space or getting into like, maybe some conflict, right? And I think what he kind of took away from bringing guys on, to interview them on his podcast was, insight and I guess like little tidbits of, where it could be challenging or, where things could get, a little bit muddy, right? For example, like he had Joe Mazzulla on. I love that podcast that he had Joe Mazzulla on because it kind of brought the insight of what Joe Mazzulla really is, from a mentality standpoint, right? And he's a quirky dude, right? He just is. But quirky is sometimes okay. Uncomfortability is okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable, right? So, and I think that's like something that JJ Redick will take with him. I think there's other pieces, like you said, his intellect, his strategy on the basketball court. And the fact that he played in the league, I think that's something to be true. Like, the fact that he can be relatable, the fact that he can understand when, guys are having an off night, it's like you as long as you're relatable and your message is being delivered, they're going to respect you. So I think highly of Redick. I really liked him coming out of Duke. But, when he became a pro, he was lights out from 3. So I always say, too, I think the best coaches are usually not the best players, right? And the reason why I say that is if you're in a role or, if you're a bench warmer or if you're coming off the bench, you see all the ins and outs, right? Whereas if you're starting, you see all the things on the court, like the different aspects or strategies. But when you're off the court, that's when you can really analyze and nitpick, the strengths and weaknesses. You really dissect everything, and understand, like, and be relatable. Like the fact that you're relatable to a lot of these players in the NBA, and you can understand when things go wrong or when things go right. Everything's a challenge, right? So I always say if you're not starting, it's never a bad thing because you can see inside and out, from a game standpoint and practice too. But let's flip it over to the BDE belt. Underdog BDE belt of the week. Winner goes to Jaguars running back Tank Bigsby. When you think of Tank, just hear that name. Like, it for me, it was kind of easy because I think he had close to 120 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. Yes, he was playing against a very vulnerable and soft, run defense from the Patriots, which shouldn't be a surprise to a lot of people this year. They have a lot of gaping holes and, a lot of injuries, guys off the field having issues. But Tank was a guy that ran with force, that found a way to get in the end zone twice. The offensive line stood their own as well, but there was a lot of broken tackles. And I think that Tank Bigsby, what he does well is he doesn't run east-west. He runs north-south, and he runs with a lot of power, and he's probably taking notice from Derrick Henry. So I'm going Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, can't go wrong with that pick. He started off that, fantasy football Sunday and Sunday football just eating it up on the ground. So Tank definitely a good pick. I'm going to go with the Monday night primetime guy, Lamar Jackson, who I think we alluded to in our previews last week that we expect a big game through the air from him. And boy, did he deliver. 17 to 22, 281 yards, 5 touchdown passes. He also ran for over 50 yards, just showing that he can do it all, hit different targets. Obviously, Mark Andrews and him seem to be getting back on the same page. He hit Rashard Bateman a couple times for some big plays. Justice Hill. Obviously,
Zay Flowers
had a big game on the ground too. But Flowers, I mean, It was a lot, and it was a lot for the Bucks defense to handle. So I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson as the BDE belt winner.
Yeah, and think of the Ravens too, Ticket. When you think of the Ravens, they're bad defensively this year. They're like dead last in the passing defense. They're awful in the running defense. Like they're just tremendously bad defensively, which is a surprise probably for a lot. I mean, when you think of it, Anthony Weaver went from the Ravens to the Dolphins. Dolphins become a top 10 defense in the league as far as passing defense goes, at least. So I think that's an easy win, for Lamar to start, focus on the offense because he does have a lot more pressure because the defense just isn't holding their own. So I like that pick. I think Lamar Jackson is going to be up for MVP again. But yeah, it's tremendously awful defensively, but they're really good offensively. So I think they're going to find a way to make that balance and find a way to attack. So let's flip it over to the hardwood, right? It's opening night officially. I know last night was obviously banner night and we had the Lakers, but for all the other teams that participate in the NBA, tonight is the day or night that they start playing. So we're going to get into a hot take segment called From Downtown. So if you know NBA Jam, from downtown, heating up, that type of shit. Ticket and myself will pass the rock back and forth on those takes, and then we will get into some predictions for the 2024-25 season. So I'll start off at the top, and we'll go back and forth and pass the rock as mentioned. I got the Pistons making the playoffs this year. I think they're in the play-in game. When you think of JB Bickerstaff, he had a lot of success with Cleveland, right? And I think he had a bad, it's a bad choice by Cleveland just to let him go like that. They had a really good year, and I get it. Donovan Mitchell and they're, Darius Garland, they're stacked. I get it, Cleveland. But I think JB Bickerstaff, has that, experience and you can believe in his message. And I think Detroit is just missing that extra oomph, right? And I think that extra oomph is JB Bickerstaff. When you think of Cade Cunningham, you think of Jaden Ivey, they acquired Tobias Harris, Archer Thompson, and then they go and draft Ron Holland. They bring back Isaiah Stewart. They traded for Tim Hardaway. Like they have a good amount of pieces to at least be in the playing game, right? And I think that's very, very important because if you find a way as a young team to get into the playing game, like for example, let's say for the Indiana Pacers, right? Before Indiana Pacers were relevant last year with, Tyrese Halliburton, it was more so about grooming the young players and believing in the system offensively and defensively. And I think a huge caveat going into this year is Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham has to take the next step. And I think he can unlock it. Like I said, with the Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, like JB Bickerstaff kind of helped them develop. So I really think that Detroit finds a way, to sneak in the playoffs, get the playing game, and see where it goes from there. But I think that's an improvement. I think they are at 38 wins this year, overall going into the season, and I would ride that for sure on the higher. And I think Detroit's going to be an okay team, but they'll sneak in. They should.